I stood in the dim, familiar scent of floor polish and old wood, tracing my hand along the dusty aisles of what was once Holloway Supply Company. The place hadn't changed in 3 decades. Not one bit. The same brass cash register still sat proudly on the counter, dulled and dented from 1,000 transactions. Sunlight streamed in through streaked windows, throwing patterns across the creaky oak floorboards right where Dad used to teach me how to face the canned goods. "Jenna, please tell me you're joking," my brother Tyler said, snapping me out of my daze. I turned to find him in his tailored suit, arms crossed, expression somewhere between frustration and disbelief. Beside him, our younger sister, Camilla, checked her phone, probably researching vacation homes in Bali. "The estate lawyer said this place is worth, what, 40 grand? You're walking away from nearly 300,000 in liquid assets for this?" I took a breath, steadying myself. "Yes, I'm keeping the store." Camilla laughed like I'd just said I was adopting a giraffe. "You realize you could buy like 8 of these places and still have change left over, right?" They weren't wrong. Holloway's had been limping along for years. Dad had refused to shut it down, even as most of the town packed up and left. Greystone, our once bustling community, now felt like a ghost that hadn't quite let go. "It's not about the money," I said quietly, more to myself than to them. Tyler scoffed. "It's always about the money." I could have reminded him that I stayed to help Dad through his cancer treatments while they built careers in Boston and LA. I could have brought up how I juggled night classes and stock duty while he dined in glass towers. But what was the point? They never saw me. "The papers are ready," I told them. "You two can split the cash. I'm taking the store." Camilla rolled her eyes. "Enjoy your glorified pantry." They left with designer luggage and that expensive scent of superiority trailing behind them. The front door chimed softly as it shut, same way it always had. That's when I felt it. A strange calm. I'd done something that made no sense on paper but felt absolutely right. "Stubborn, like your dad," said Mr. Keene, our family attorney, still standing behind me. "I prefer persistent," I said, flashing a tired smile. He gave a half chuckle, then squinted at me. "You sure about this?" Instead of answering, I pulled a worn file from my backpack and laid it on the counter. His brow furrowed as he flipped through the contents: maps, traffic data, environmental studies, and most important, a pre-approved state proposal for a new highway expansion. "A highway?" he muttered. "Coming through here?" "Next year," I nodded. "And there's a planned off-ramp, 4 blocks that way." He blinked, stunned. "Where did you get all this?" "Planning board meetings, city archives." A very bored civil engineer who didn't mind a little company during his lunch break. I'd been attending council meetings for years, blending in, taking notes. I wasn't the flashy sibling, but I listened. I learned. And when I overheard whispers of the expansion, I started preparing. "Jenna," Keene said slowly, "your father knew." I paused. "Knew what?" "That this highway was coming. He updated the will 2 weeks before he passed. Told me to let you decide what happened to the store. Said you'd know what to do." My throat tightened, but I smiled anyway. He believed in me, even when no one else did. The following days were a whirlwind. I filed paperwork, updated permits, reorganized ancient inventory. And when the shock wore off, I called the one person I knew could help me bring the place back to life. "You're out of your mind," said Mason Hargrove, former prom king turned contractor, as he walked the aisles with me. "Not denying that," I said, "but I've got a plan." He raised an eyebrow as I unrolled a set of blueprints on the checkout counter. Gone were the narrow aisles and flickering lights. In their place, a sleek storefront with flexible vendor space, warehouse capability, and expanded parking out back. "You're building more than a store," he murmured. "Exactly," I said. "I'm building a gateway." I showed him the highway proposal, the expected traffic, the opportunity. This place is going to be the first thing people see when they exit. It needs to offer more than dusty cereal boxes. He studied me for a long time, then gave a slow nod. "All right, let's do it." Word spread fast. The town thought I'd lost it. A few locals even bet on how long before I gave up. But I worked 10, 12, sometimes 14-hour days balancing renovations with daily operations. And slowly, Holloway's began to shift. We pulled out the old fixtures, repainted the walls in warm, inviting tones, replaced the rotting wood with polished concrete, installed energy-efficient lights and a walk-in fridge. We added a local coffee bar, offered shelves to small businesses, turned the back into a shipping and receiving area. Still, the doubts crept in at night, especially when I'd check the account balance and see the numbers drop faster than they came in. "You're hemorrhaging money," said my accountant, Lydia, over a late-night call. "I know, but I've got investors lined up. And once the highway is announced, you're betting big." I am. A week later, a woman from the planning commission stopped by. "I heard you're turning down offers," she said, sipping a to-go latte from our new bar. "Not interested in selling, even for double market?" Even then, she left with a cryptic smile. The next morning, Mason found me in the parking lot, rubbing my temples. "Someone's waiting for you." I turned to find Tyler. He leaned against a rented SUV, arms crossed. "Got a call from someone wanting to buy the store. They offered me 5 times the assessed value. Told them I don't own it, but I had to see for myself. Are you really doing this?" I unlocked the door without a word and walked in. The morning sun illuminated our fresh shelves and brightened the newly restored checkout area. "I'm not just doing this," I said. "I'm building something." His expression flickered with uncertainty. "Dad left us equal parts. You took the building, we took the cash. But if that cash turns into something more, that changes things." "No, it doesn't," I said firmly. "You made your choice. I made mine." He hesitated, then left. But it wasn't just Tyler. In the following weeks, more developers came sniffing around, some friendly, some pushy. One even threatened legal action. Camilla flew back in with a team of lawyers, said I was violating fiduciary obligations. I laughed, loudly. She didn't find it funny. Still, I held firm. Because I had something no one else saw coming. The exit ramp was being announced in 3 weeks. And when it did, the entire world would know exactly what Holloway's supply had become. The weeks that followed Tyler's visit were a blur. The renovations weren't just about fresh paint and new shelves. I could feel the weight of each decision, each upgrade I made was a gamble, and the stakes were higher than I cared to admit. Every dollar that went into Holloway's felt like it was disappearing into a black hole. But then came the first small victory. New faces started walking through the doors. Families who'd never set foot in here before. Fresh faces from the nearby town of Ashford. People looking for something more than just the basics. They came in, grabbed what they needed, then lingered. A little hesitant at first, but I could see the spark of curiosity in their eyes. "You've really turned this place around, Miss S." Carter, the local librarian, said one morning, looking around at the remodeled aisles. Her eyes flickered toward the new coffee bar we'd installed, with locally sourced beans. "It smells like home," she added softly. I smiled. That's the idea. It was small, a quiet change, but it was working. Then came the first test of my resolve. It happened when Mrs. Jenkins, the woman who lived 2 houses down, pulled up one night after I'd locked the door. She stepped out of her car, eyeing me warily. "Jenna," she called, her voice carrying across the empty lot. "I need to talk to you about something." I froze, a knot twisting in my stomach. Here it comes. The town's gossip mill never missed an opportunity to churn. "You heard the rumors?" she asked, her eyes shifting nervously as if someone might overhear. I nodded slowly. "What rumors?" "They're offering you big money, aren't they, Miss S?" Jenkins didn't wait for me to answer, continuing as if we were 2 old friends. "I hear it's over triple the value. A developer is already planning to make an offer for the land. They're saying it's just a matter of time." I felt a pang of anxiety but kept my face neutral. "Not interested in selling." She tilted her head, sizing me up. "Are you sure about that? Because if you're sinking this much money into renovations, you'll need to turn a profit. Fast." I shrugged, managing a tight smile. "I've got a plan. It'll pay off, Miss S." Jenkins looked at me, almost pityingly, then nodded. "Well, you're the one living with your choices, not me. But I'd be careful. You know the town won't last forever." "I'm betting it will," I said, before walking back into the store and locking the door behind me. The next day, the pressure mounted. I was alone in the back office, sorting inventory and tweaking my projections, when I saw the first text from Tyler. It was short, to the point, and it stung. "I heard you're turning down a developer's offer. I tried to tell you, you're going to lose everything." I stared at the screen for a long moment, my finger hovering over the reply button. But instead of answering, I turned the phone face down and focused on the task at hand. The renovations had to continue. I couldn't afford to doubt myself now. By the end of the month, word about Holloway's changes had spread through Greystone. The town that had forgotten what it felt like to have something new, something exciting, was waking up. Local businesses, once resigned to failure, were talking about how they could keep up. A few of them even started considering renovations themselves. And then came the first real sign that things were starting to turn in my favor. I'd hired Mason's crew to finish up some structural work, and when he came by one afternoon to check on progress, he found me at the counter with a fresh batch of paperwork. "Got something for me?" he asked, flashing me a grin. "Actually, I do," I said, tapping the file. "You're going to want to see this." I handed him the maps and studies I'd collected from the State Planning Commission. His eyes scanned the details, and as he reached the section about the upcoming highway exit, he stopped. "Wait a minute, this exit," Mason muttered. "It's almost directly across from here?" "Yep," I said, "and once it's in place, we're going to be in the perfect spot." He nodded slowly, his contractor's mind processing the numbers. "You might just be onto something, Jenna, but we need to be ready. I've got ideas for a bigger overhaul shelving systems, a bigger layout for the back." "We're on the same page," I said, my voice steady. "This isn't just a store anymore. It's going to be something bigger." Mason smiled. "Hell, I'll help you make it happen." 2 weeks later, the first real change happened. The developers started calling. I knew it wouldn't take long before they'd realize the goldmine Greystone was about to become. But I also knew they were underestimating me, underestimating Holloway's. One morning, just after I opened the store, I saw a well-dressed man waiting by the door. He had the look of someone who didn't waste time. His suit, the polished shoes, everything about him screamed business. "I'm Peter Randolph," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "I represent a group of investors interested in the property here. We're offering a generous sum." I raised an eyebrow, fighting the instinct to laugh. "Isn't it a little early for that? The highway's still a few months out." He smiled coolly. "The highway is exactly why we're here. Once that exit opens, property values will shoot up. We're offering you top dollar now, before everyone else catches on." I stared at him, my mind racing. He didn't understand. He was just looking at the surface the same way everyone else had. But I wasn't selling this time. I wasn't folding. "Not interested," I said firmly. "This place isn't for sale." Peter's smile faltered, then returned with an edge. "That's a shame. You'll regret it, but that's your choice." I watched him leave, a strange satisfaction settling in my chest. I had my reasons for not selling, and soon everyone would know why. By the time the town's biggest investors started taking notice, I was ready for them. I'd quietly built relationships with a few local business leaders who shared my vision for Greystone's future. People who weren't afraid of the hard work it would take to turn this place around. But no one knew what I had in store. The plans for expansion weren't just about a new coffee bar or trendy displays. I had bigger goals that would make Holloway's the heart of the region, a distribution hub, a local supply chain powerhouse. The highway exit would give us the edge we needed. And when that announcement hit, everyone would see. The day the official announcement came was like the calm before a storm. I sat in the back office, staring out the window at the street outside, when I saw the first of the press trucks roll into town. News vans, state officials. The mayor, flanked by a few of his colleagues, stood ready for the big moment. Ben was beside me, watching the chaos unfold. "They don't know what's coming, do they?" he asked with a grin. "They don't," I replied, "but they will." Just as the first official announcement came through the speakers outside, my phone buzzed with a new message from Tyler. "You better not be doing anything stupid." "We need to talk." I didn't respond. Instead, I turned to Ben. "It's time." The town hall was buzzing when I arrived. The old brick building, once the heart of Greystone, had been transformed for the day into a press conference venue. Television trucks lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like antennas for change. I stood at the back of the crowd, blending in, watching the officials bustle with last-minute preparations. I felt a nervous twinge in my stomach, but I brushed it off. There was no going back now. In a matter of minutes, the world would know what I had been planning for months. Ben stood beside me, eyes scanning the crowd. "This is it. Are you ready?" "I don't think I'll ever be ready," I said, glancing at the old town square outside. The renovations at Holloway's were almost complete, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to shift something I couldn't control. The mayor stepped up to the podium, his confident voice cutting through the buzz. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today for this monumental announcement. The state of Greystone is changing, and we're excited to share our plans for the future. Today, we unveil the new interstate expansion, complete with an all-important off-ramp just a few blocks from here." I knew the moment he said off-ramp, the room would fall silent. The highway exit I had been banking on would change everything. Ben nudged me, his eyes lighting up. "You were right. This town is about to explode." I felt a strange mix of excitement and calm as the mayor went on, outlining the new plans that would transform Greystone into a regional hub. They announced new construction projects, businesses moving in, and the growing potential for the area. But I wasn't interested in their promises. I was watching for the key detail, the one that mattered most. Finally, it came. "And the off-ramp will be located at the intersection of Main and Church Streets," the mayor concluded, gesturing down the road toward Holloway's. "This will allow easy access to both local businesses and travelers passing through. We're anticipating a significant increase in traffic within the next 2 years." I caught Ben's eye. "2 years," I whispered. "That's my window." Ben grinned, his contractor's mind already calculating the possibilities. "You've got the perfect spot." I didn't need to hear more. The investors, the developers, the media, they were all focusing on the flashy new developments coming in. But I knew something they didn't. I had the location. I had the strategy. And most importantly, I had time. Not much, but enough to make this work. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sounds of construction, of people hustling to prepare for what was coming, buzzed in my head like a swarm of bees. Every noise, every whisper felt like a signal. The storm had arrived, and I was right in the middle of it. I checked my phone for the 100th time, scrolling past the endless texts from Tyler, trying to convince me to sell, to take the easy route and walk away with the money. This is a huge mistake. You can't build something out of nothing. You're wasting your time. I could feel his judgment through the screen, but I didn't respond. Not this time. I wasn't interested in his advice anymore. I wasn't going to let him or anyone else define what was possible for me. The next day, the storm intensified. Mason called early, his voice urgent. "You won't believe this, but I just got a call from a developer. They're offering double the original offer for the property." "They know about the off-ramp now." "Double?" I asked, barely containing my shock. "Who? Doesn't matter. They're trying to push us into a corner." "But here's the kicker," Mason said, his voice lowering. "I think they've been in talks with someone else. Someone who's going to do whatever it takes to get this land." My stomach churned. This was the first real sign that the competition had caught wind of what I was doing. They knew about the highway, and they knew that Holloway's was positioned perfectly. "We need to move fast," I said, gathering my thoughts. "I've got my own plans. I'm not selling." "I didn't think you would, but we need a legal team ready. They'll stop at nothing." I glanced around the store, the shelves still empty in some sections, the renovations incomplete. But I wasn't going to stop now, not when everything was so close. "We're not giving in," I said firmly. "Oh, get the paperwork ready." By the time the meeting came around, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. I sat at my desk in the back office, flicking through contracts and plans for expansion when the door opened, and in walked 2 men I didn't recognize. They were both dressed in tailored suits, but there was something about them that didn't sit right with me. "Miss Holloway?" one of them asked, extending a hand with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We're with Hawthorne and Sons. We represent a group of investors interested in purchasing your property." I stood, coolly meeting his gaze. "I'm not selling." The man's smile faltered for a second, but he quickly regained his composure. "I'm afraid that's not really your decision anymore, Miss Holloway." Our clients have made their final offer. If you're not willing to discuss it, we'll move forward with a more formal process. He slid a folder across the desk toward me. I didn't touch it. I've been getting offers all week, I said, leaning back in my chair, and I'm not selling. The second man, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. It's not really about what you want. It's about what's best for the town. We have big plans for this property. The new highway exit is a game changer, and we're prepared to make sure it goes to the right people. People who can handle the responsibility of what's coming. I felt the weight of their words, but it didn't shake me. I'm not interested in your offer. They exchanged a glance. The first man leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. You'll regret this, Miss Holloway. This place is a relic. You can't build a future on it. You're wrong, I said, my voice steady. This store isn't just about what's here now. It's about what it could be, what Greystone could be. I'm not going anywhere. The men stood up, exchanging another unreadable look. We'll see about that, the first one said, his voice laced with finality. Good day, Miss Holloway. As they left, I let out the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. They had underestimated me. They thought they could intimidate me with their offers and threats, but I wasn't going to back down. I picked up the phone, dialing the number I'd been avoiding. Ben, I said, as soon as he picked up. I need help. It's time to put our plan into action. By the end of the week, I'd set everything into motion. The groundwork had been laid. The investors might have thought they could just buy me out, but they didn't understand the bigger picture. Holloway's wasn't just a store, it was the future of Greystone. And now, it was my turn to take control of it. The tension in Greystone was palpable now. The highway announcement had everyone buzzing, and it felt like the whole town was waiting for someone to make a move. My phone was constantly pinging with messages from people, some curious, others a little too eager to get a piece of the action. Word had spread like wildfire about Holloway's. Everyone wanted to know what I was doing, what my next move would be. But I kept my focus. I couldn't afford distractions, not when I had so much at stake. The store was busier than ever. New customers came in, some out of curiosity, others because they were hoping to get in on whatever was about to happen. I could hear the chatter in the aisles, whispers of change in the air. But the investors? They weren't going away. They were relentless, and every day their offers grew bigger. I was sitting at my desk one afternoon, scanning through new plans for the store's expansion, when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Mason. Hey, Mason, I said, picking up the phone. What's going on? We've got a problem, he said, his voice tight. The developers are pushing harder, and I'm hearing rumors that one of them's about to file a lawsuit to force a sale. They've got connections, and I don't think they're going to back down. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand through my hair. This was getting serious, but I'd been expecting this. They wouldn't just roll over because I said no. They'd find a way to push me out. Do you have anything we can use? I asked, already flipping through the legal files I'd been reviewing earlier. I'm working on it, but we need to act fast. We can't let them corner you. All right, I said, thinking quickly. I'll call Tom. We need to be ready for whatever they throw at us. Tom Harrison, our family lawyer, had been with us for years. He'd been the one to help Dad make sure the store stayed in the family, and I needed his expertise now more than ever. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that a lawsuit wasn't just a problem, it was an opportunity. If they filed a lawsuit, that meant they'd have to show their hand. I'd be able to see their strategies, their weaknesses, and I could use that to my advantage. The next morning, I met with Tom in the back office of the store. He looked exactly like he always had, a little rumpled, a little tired, but sharp as ever. He gave me a steady look as he sat down across from me, scanning through the papers I had pulled out. They're serious about this, aren't they? Tom asked, his brow furrowed as he flipped through the legal documents. More serious than I thought, I said, my fingers tapping restlessly on the desk. They've got connections, and they're not going to back down easily. I know, Tom muttered. But I've been going through your father's will. He didn't just leave the store to you out of sentiment. He left it to you because he believed you were the right one to take it forward. And I'm going to make sure you do. Tom paused, his eyes narrowing. But there's one thing you should know. If they want to file a lawsuit, they'll likely have to involve the town, and that's where we can make some noise. I looked up at him, intrigued. How? Greystone is built on a foundation of community, Tom said slowly. The town loves this place. And if you frame this as a fight for Greystone's future, not just your own people will rally behind you. I leaned forward, suddenly more alert. So you're saying I can use the town's loyalty to my advantage? Exactly, Tom said, his voice firm. If we get the right people behind you, they'll be less likely to go after the store. People don't like outsiders pushing their way into a town that's been home to generations of families. But it's going to take more than just legal maneuvering. You'll need the town's support. I took a deep breath. This was it, the turning point. If I could rally the people who still believed in Greystone, I'd have a better chance of standing my ground. But I needed something more. I needed proof. The following week, I launched a quiet campaign to rally the town. I started small talking to the regulars who came in every day, making sure they knew what was at stake. Then, I expanded. I reached out to local businesses, local leaders, and even the younger generation that had left Greystone for bigger cities, but still held a soft spot for the town they'd grown up in. I know things are tough right now, I told them, looking each of them in the eye. But I believe in this place, and I'm not giving up on it. Not now, not ever. The response was immediate. People started showing up at Holloway's, not just to shop, but to talk, to offer their support. They shared their memories of the store, of the town, and of the future they still believed in. It was everything I needed to hear. It was the momentum I could build on. I even received a letter from the local historical society, offering their backing. They believed the store was a crucial part of Greystone's history. I was starting to see the community rally behind me in ways I hadn't expected. They didn't want to see Holloway's disappear. They didn't want Greystone to die along with it. But the developers didn't give up. They sent their lawyers. They pushed for meetings, trying to pressure me into agreeing to their terms. One morning, just as I was getting ready to open, I walked into the store to find an envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a legal notice. It was official now. They were filing suit. I took a deep breath and called Tom. "They've filed," I said, my voice steady but tight. "They're trying to take me down," Tom sighed. I figured as much. "But Jenna, this is where it gets interesting. We've got enough support now to turn this into a public fight. We need to let the town know what's happening. Let them know how much this means." I nodded. I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. The legal battle didn't last long. The town's response was overwhelming. I held a public meeting in the town square, with support from everyone from shop owners to teachers to parents who'd grown up with the Holloway family. People were fired up. They made it clear that Greystone wasn't just some piece of real estate to be bought and sold. It was a place that meant something. Soon, the developers started hearing the rumblings. They had underestimated Greystone's loyalty, its sense of community, and my ability to lead it forward. With every day that passed, they lost more ground. In the end, they backed off. The lawsuit was quietly dropped. The developers tried to shift their focus elsewhere, but the damage had already been done. They had miscalculated, and I'd won. The store wasn't just a store anymore. Holloway's had become a symbol, a beacon for the future of Greystone. It wasn't about the highway. It wasn't about the money. It was about what this town meant to the people who lived here. And with that, I knew I had everything I needed. I stood in the newly renovated store, watching as the first customers of the day walked through the doors. The sign out front was a reminder of the past, but it was the work we were doing now that was going to carry us into the future. Greystone wasn't done yet, and neither was I. I stood at the counter, watching the morning sun streak across the polished floors of Holloway's. The store had never felt this alive before. The shelves were stocked, the coffee bar hummed with activity, and the familiar faces that had always shopped here were now joined by new ones. It wasn't just the renovation or the modern display racks. It was the sense of possibility. Greystone was waking up. It had been 3 months since the developers had backed off. The legal battle had turned into a rallying cry, and I'd finally gotten what I'd wanted. Not just for Holloway's, but for the whole town. But now came the real challenge, turning this victory into something sustainable. "Morning, Miss Holloway," a voice broke me from my thoughts. I looked up to see Ellie, one of the new employees I'd hired, carrying a tray of fresh pastries from the local bakery. She smiled, setting it down on the counter. Looks like another busy day ahead. I smiled back. I think we're just getting started. I wasn't wrong. The renovations had paid off. The store's traffic had more than doubled, and the community seemed more invested than ever. But there was still work to be done. Greystone's revival wasn't just about Holloway's. It was about breathing life back into the whole town, one step at a time. That afternoon, I sat down with Ben at the corner booth in the cafe section. His construction company had been instrumental in the renovations, and now he was offering his help with the next phase of the plan. "Where do you want to take this next?" Ben asked, sipping his coffee as he looked around the bustling store. "I want to expand beyond this building," I said, gesturing to the newly updated retail space. "There's more potential here. We have the warehouse, and I think we can start distributing local goods, coffee, produce, maybe even crafts. Build a network for Greystone. Not just retail, but a hub for local businesses." Ben raised an eyebrow. "So, you're thinking bigger than just a store. You're thinking logistics." "Exactly," I said, excited by the idea. "This highway exit is going to bring people through Greystone, but if we can tap into that traffic, bring in goods from nearby farms, artisans, and suppliers, we'll create something that works for the whole town. The highway's a gateway, but we're the anchor." Ben sat back, his eyes calculating. "It's ambitious, but I can see it. You're thinking of Holloway's as more than a business. It's a lifeline for the town, a way to keep things connected." "Exactly," I repeated, leaning forward. "And I want to be the one to make it happen. If we build this right, we can make Greystone a regional destination. Not just a stop on the highway, but a place people want to stay." Ben smiled. "You've got the vision. Let's do it." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings and plans. I reached out to local farms, small business owners, and even a few regional suppliers who were interested in getting their products into Greystone. The more I talked to people, the more I realized how much untapped potential was out there. The town hadn't just been stagnant, it had been waiting for someone to believe in it again. "Jenna, you're really doing it," Camilla said when she called to check in. She had been skeptical from the beginning, but I could hear the change in her voice now. "I thought this was going to be a crazy idea, but now it's actually happening." I chuckled, feeling the weight of the conversation shift. "It's still a work in progress, but yeah, it's happening. You should see the place now. We've got regulars coming in every day, and we're bringing in deliveries from local farms. People are starting to see Holloway's differently." She paused. "I can't believe it. I'm actually proud of you." The words felt like a balm. For years, Camilla and Tyler had been the ones everyone looked up to, the ones with the rail careers. But now, I was doing something that was starting to matter. I wasn't just running a store, I was shaping a community. In the meantime, I began to leverage the growing interest in Greystone. I reached out to a local marketing firm, and together, we launched a campaign to promote the town as a destination for travelers and local businesses alike. We focused on the highway expansion, the town's charm, and the growing entrepreneurial spirit in the community. Holloway's would be the face of the town's resurgence. "Greystone, a small town with big possibilities," the slogan read. It was simple, but it felt right. Then came the breakthrough. A major regional grocery chain reached out to me. They had heard about Holloway's efforts to transform into a distribution hub for local goods and wanted to partner with us for deliveries in the area. The deal wasn't finalized yet, but the fact that they were interested was a massive step in the right direction. "We're going to need a bigger warehouse," Ben said when I told him the news. "And more staff." I couldn't help but grin. "And more space for all the things we're going to bring in." The next few months were a blur of progress. The renovations were complete, and the distribution network began to take shape. The new inventory was flying off the shelves, and our local partnerships were growing stronger by the day. What started as a small general store in a town no one thought had a future had become a thriving business, a key player in Greystone's turnaround. By now, my siblings had stopped calling, but I didn't mind. They had made their choice, and I had made mine. Tyler's investment firm had pulled out of Greystone, and Camilla's law firm had moved on to more profitable areas. They couldn't see what was coming, but I didn't need their approval anymore. I had my town, I had Holloway's, and that was all that mattered. As I stood in the newly expanded store, watching customers walk through the door with bags full of fresh produce, local jams, and handmade crafts, I felt a deep sense of pride. Greystone wasn't just surviving anymore, it was thriving. And I was at the heart of it. But there was one thing I hadn't expected: the national recognition. The story of Holloway's and Greystone's comeback had started to spread, first across the state, then nationally. People were looking at small towns differently. They were seeing the potential in places like Greystone, in places like Holloway's. And that was when I realized this was just the beginning. The future of Holloway's wasn't just about a store anymore. It was about a movement. It was about showing the world that even in a world of big box stores and sprawling malls, there was still room for community, for local business, for the heart of a town to shine. I wasn't just building a business. I was building something that would outlast me, a legacy. And as I watched the sun set behind the store, casting a golden glow on the new sign above the door, I knew one thing for sure: my father would have been proud. The months after the partnership with the regional grocery chain felt like a dream. Holloway's wasn't just a store anymore, it was a destination. A symbol of what could happen when a community decided not to fade away, but to rise up. The new distribution network was thriving, connecting local farms and artisans to customers across the region. Orders piled in faster than I could keep track. And Greystone? It was starting to feel alive again. But there were days when I'd stand in the middle of the store, watching people come and go, and I'd wonder if I had done enough. Was this the future I had imagined? The one I had fought for? Or was it just a fleeting moment of success before everything faded into obscurity? I didn't have time for doubt. There was too much happening. The media attention was growing, and people from surrounding towns were starting to pay attention. Holloway's had become a symbol of small-town resilience, a place where dreams could be built with hard work and vision. But every victory came with a new challenge. That challenge arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the back office, making calls to suppliers when the door opened. I looked up to see Mason standing there, holding a stack of papers. "We've got a problem," he said, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced with a tense expression. "A big one." I stood up. "What is it?" He handed me the papers. They were from a competitor, a large national retail chain that had set its sights on Greystone. They'd secured land near the highway exit and were planning to build a massive distribution center. And they were offering better rates, better services, basically everything Holloway's was trying to do, but on a much larger scale. "They're coming for the market we've built," Mason said, watching me closely. "This could be big trouble for us." I took a deep breath, scanning the papers. I'd known this was coming. When you start making waves, someone always notices. I wasn't surprised by the competition. I was ready for it. "Where are they setting up?" I asked, already plotting my next move. "Near the new exit." "It's prime real estate," Mason replied. "They'll have the logistics down, and they've got the resources to go bigger than we ever could." I felt the weight of the situation, but I wasn't going to back down. This wasn't just about Holloway's anymore. It was about Greystone's future. "We've got something they don't," I said, my voice steady. "Community." Mason raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? People don't just come here for the products. They come for the experience." "The connection to the town. Holloway's isn't just a store, it's the heartbeat of this community. We can't compete with their scale, but we can compete with their soul." The next few days were a whirlwind of planning. I met with Ben, Mason, and Tom to figure out how we could fight back. The national retailer had the upper hand in terms of infrastructure, but we had the loyalty of the people. And that was something I was going to leverage to the fullest. I reached out to local artists, farmers, and small business owners, inviting them to partner with us on a new initiative. If the big guys were going to dominate the market, we would turn it into a movement, one that celebrated everything local, everything real. We would make Holloway's a hub for Greystone's culture, not just its economy. "Let's build a community that no one can replicate," I said during a town meeting one evening. "We'll hold workshops, create events, and give our local businesses a place to shine. We won't just sell products. We'll sell experiences. We'll be the destination, not just a stop on the highway." The response was immediate. People were hungry for something different, something authentic. They wanted to be part of this fight, and they were willing to put in the work. It was time to push forward, and I knew that every decision mattered. We rolled out our first major initiative, a local marketplace held once a month where small businesses could showcase their goods. It was a hit from the start. The first event brought in over 1,000 visitors, some from nearby towns, others from further out, all eager to see what Greystone had to offer. The local vendors were thrilled, and the response from the crowd was overwhelming. We followed that up with live music, cooking classes using local ingredients, and even a farm-to-table event that highlighted the produce we'd been getting from surrounding farms. Holloway's wasn't just selling products anymore. We were selling a way of life. We were selling a story, Greystone's story. The competition was fierce, but I felt more determined than ever. The national chain might have had the money, but we had something they couldn't buy. We had a story. We had a reason for being here that went beyond profit margins. And slowly, I started to see the fruits of our labor. People came back. They told their friends. They shared their experiences. They saw Holloway's not just as a business, but as a part of their community. And when that national retailer started advertising its grand opening, they weren't met with excitement, they were met with resistance. 2 months later, we held our largest event yet, a street fair that stretched the entire length of Main Street. It wasn't just about Holloway's anymore. It was about the future of Greystone. Food trucks lined the streets. Vendors filled the sidewalks. Local bands played, and the entire town came alive. I stood at the front of the event, watching the crowd with a sense of pride I hadn't felt before. This was it, the culmination of everything we'd worked for. The town wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. "I think we've got them beat," Ben said, standing beside me. "No one can compete with what you've built here, Jenna." I smiled, watching the community come together. Maybe we can't compete with their scale, but we've got something they'll never have. A reason to fight. A reason to believe in something bigger than just profits. The national retailer never opened its doors. They pulled out of Greystone after just a few weeks. The community had spoken, and they weren't interested in a soulless corporate presence. They wanted the heart of Greystone. They wanted Holloway's. As for me, I was more than just a store owner now. I was a part of something much larger. A community that had come together against all odds to prove that even in a world that seemed to be moving faster than ever, there was still room for small towns to thrive. There was still room for people to believe in something that mattered. A year after the street fair, Greystone was unrecognizable thanks to the people who had never given up on it. The town was a thriving hub of local businesses, and Holloway's was at the center of it all. We had expanded even further, becoming the main supplier for local farms, artisans, and small businesses across the region. As I walked through the store one afternoon, I saw a familiar face, Tyler. He had come back to visit after hearing about the success we'd had. "Jenna, I have to admit, I was wrong," he said, standing by the counter. "This is bigger than I thought. You really pulled it off." I smiled. "Yeah, I did. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that the store wasn't just my father's legacy anymore. It was mine." As I stood there, watching the sunset through the front windows of Holloway's, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The town was alive, the store was thriving, and I had built something that no one, no matter how big or powerful, could ever take away. The future of Greystone was in good hands. My hands. This is the final chapter, but Jenna's journey is one that will live on in the town of Greystone. The story may have reached its conclusion, but the lessons learned, the community built, and the vision realized will continue for generations to come. Story 2. I never imagined that a typical Tuesday night would challenge all of my preconceived notions about my family. Sophie, my 5-year-old daughter, was coloring at the kitchen table while I was at home making supper. My phone rang. On the other end, my mother's voice wavered. "Olivia, your dad?" "A heart attack has struck him. Memorial Hospital is where we are." The ground beneath my feet seemed like it was tilting. Michael Bennett, my father, had always been the epitome of well-being. 60-year-old marathon runners, eating organic food before it became popular, and giving us endless lectures about the need of physical activity. There was no chance of a heart attack. "I'm en route." I was able to say that while immediately grabbing my car keys. In only a few minutes, my husband James came to see Sophie give me a firm embrace before I departed. He murmured that he will be all right. "The strongest person I've ever met is your dad." It seemed unreal to travel to the hospital. Memories came flooding back. I'm learning to ride a bike from my dad. When I graduated from college, he smiled proudly. He sobbed as he escorted me down the aisle. My rock had always been him, the one thing that is certain in an uncertain world. There was mayhem in the emergency department. Nurses hurrying by, beeping monitors. My nose was stinging from the strong disinfectant odor. In a plastic chair, Mom sat. Tears stained her normally flawless makeup. When she spotted me, she sprang to her feet and seized me in a frantic hug. "They're testing," she added. She spoke softly over my shoulder. When it occurred, he was at his office. I'm grateful. After recognizing the signs, his assistant promptly dialed 911. Fear clawed at my chest, but I tried to be strong and hugged her close. Dad must be all right. He was just 62. Two vitals are too young to be resting in a hospital bed. Hours passed slowly. Marcus, my younger brother, showed up. His face was furrowed with concern, and his law office suit was wrinkled. Every time a doctor passed by, we jumped as we sat in nervous stillness. Around midnight, a weary-looking doctor came over to us. When he stated, "Mr. Bennett is stable," I felt my mother's bag next to me with relief. "He wants to visit his daughter. For now, only one guest. Squeeze my hand, Mom. Tell him that I adore him." My feet clicking on the linoleum, I followed the doctor to antiseptic halls. Dad was lying in a separate room, and the white hospital linen strangely made him appear smaller. He was attached to a number of machines by wires and tools, all of which beeped continuously in the low light. I took his hand and said, "Hey, Daddy." It was frigid on his flesh. He opened his eyes and fixed them on my face with such intensity that I felt uneasy. "Olivia." His voice was husky as he spoke. "I have something to tell you. I've carried it for 30 years. You need to sleep, Dad. Later we may discuss." He tightened his hold on my hand. "No, it must be right now. You must be aware of the reality if I am harmed. What is the truth?" For a minute, as though he was gaining strength, he closed his eyes. He opened them again and found tears in them. "Your biological father is not me. Your mom is unaware of it. I am the only one who knows. And, as well as your biological father." The world came to a standstill. I gazed at him, my ears rushing with blood. I was certain I had misheard. "What are you discussing?" Dad's hands were shaking as he reached under his pillow and took out an old, shabby-looking envelope. "This letter has been with me for 30 years. Go through it. Everything will make sense to you." I accepted the envelope, numb fingers. Age had yellowed the paper. The handwriting was strange, yet it was also somewhat recognizable. My father's monitors pounded relentlessly in the background as I started reading, signaling the points at which my whole world started to fall apart. "Dear Michael," started the letter. "I'll be gone by the time you read this. Catherine is unaware and will never be aware. Olivia, however, is my daughter. You were away for your father's funeral that night. The guilt has been with me for years. Catherine was at risk, mourning the loss of her sister. I was also present to console her. We both instantly regretted it. I knew I had to go as soon as she informed me she was expecting. I could never be a better guy than you. Love her. Keep her safe. Daniel, please pardon me." Tears clouded my vision as I looked up from the letter. Mom's brother-in-law, Daniel. The one who vanished following Aunt Sarah's passing. Dad gave a slow nod. "When Sarah passed away, your mother was crushed. I was out of town making arrangements for my father's funeral. One night they made a mistake, yet Daniel was there for her. It only required that. In an attempt to comprehend this impossibility, my mind raced. Before Sarah passed away in a car accident, Daniel was married to Sarah, my mother's sister. His successful legal practice and innumerable unsolved questions were left behind when he disappeared. His mother had always talked about him with a mix of sadness and rage, calling him a coward for fleeing when the family most needed him. However, how did you find out?" I stumbled. "Has he told you?" Dad's fingers fiddled with his blanket's edge. "No. 9 months after that night, the letter arrived. Only 1 week since your birth. In our mailbox, I discovered it. No address for return." I instantly recognized his handwriting. "And you never said anything for 30 years. What good would it have done?" Dad's voice was tired but firm. "Your mother was happy. You were perfect. This beautiful baby girl who looked at me with such trust. I made my choice that day. I burned the envelope, but I kept the letter just in case. In case of what? In if something happened to me. You deserve to know the truth about where you come from. But, Olivia. His grasp on my hand tightened again. This doesn't affect anything. You're my daughter in every manner that matters. I sat there letting the tears stream freely. Now every memory of my youth seemed to alter and reconfigure itself. I'm learning to ride a bike from my dad. His tolerance while I struggled with arithmetic assignments. The way he shone with delight at every school play and piano concert. Had he looked at me differently, knowing I was in his head, he scanned my face for indications of another guy. Does Marcus know? I asked, immediately thinking about my younger brother. Dad shook his head. I am the only one who knows. And now you. A nurse came in the doorway. Sorry, but it's time for Mr. Bennett to get some rest. The letter felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket as I got to my feet, my legs trembling. I will return tomorrow. I leaned down to give him a forehead kiss as I made the pledge. Olivia? When I got to the door, he called. Know that I love you no matter what you do with this knowledge. Ever since I held you for the first time, I have adored you. Furthermore, nothing will ever alter it. Unable to respond, I nodded and ran out into the hall. As I walked towards the waiting area, Mom and Marcus glanced up eagerly. What's up with him? Mom inquired, attempting to grasp my hand. I examined her face. The face of a lady who was unaware that her secret, which had been hidden for 3 decades, was about to come out. She was unaware that her husband had been bearing this load alone for years, or that I had been born out of her weakness with her deceased sister's husband. He's sleeping. Silently, I said. He will be all right, according to the doctors, but nothing will ever be all right again. That evening, the note was securely concealed in my handbag as I drove home. I was aware that this was only the start. The release of the truth would have an impact on every aspect of our existence. I kept thinking about options after I eventually climbed into bed next to my spouse, who was sleeping. Daniel took the decision to flee, my father's decision to love the kid of another man. And now I have a decision to make. How do I handle a fact that could ruin my family? I couldn't sleep since my mind was racing with questions. Did Daniel survive? Was the girl he left behind ever on his mind? Above all, should I tell my mother the truth about what actually transpired that evening 30 years ago? Or should I do as my father had done and protect her? There would be more decisions and more questions in the morning. But I laid in the dark for the moment. A heart attack impacted my life forever. And a letter from 30 years ago that had at last come to light. I sat at my kitchen table the following morning, gazing at old family pictures that were strewn all over the place. I was left alone with my thoughts and a pile of memories that seemed like falsehoods because my daughter Sophie had just left for school and James was at work. I grabbed a picture from my 5th birthday celebration. While Dad was there, I was smiling and covered in chocolate cake. No, Michael. Even though it seemed incorrect, I corrected myself, gazed at me with utter devotion. How many times had he looked for Daniel in my features? How many times had he pondered whether someone would notice today? I didn't resemble him at all. I took out the letter again, my hands shaking as I looked more closely at the penmanship. Daniel Parker. My father by birth. He was always on the fringes of family get-togethers prior to Aunt Sarah's passing, and I had hazy memories of him from my early years. I'm tall and have black hair. Silent, yet witty enough to make everyone chuckle. Shortly after Sarah's death, he vanished, and no one had heard from him ever then. It buzzed on my phone. It's the 3rd time Mom has called this morning. I let the voicemail go. How might I communicate with her? Being aware of what I was aware of? How could I not tell her the truth when I looked into her eyes? Rather, I put Daniel Parker Lawyer into the search bar on my laptop. The majority of the hundreds of results that appeared were either from different states or were too recent. I then discovered an old newspaper story from 1993 hidden on page 4. Daniel Parker, a local lawyer, departs a prominent firm. According to the story, he left Stewart and Associates, one of the best legal firms in the city, for personal reasons after his wife passed away. My breath caught when I saw the picture. I smiled like my mom. However, those eyes were definitely heads. Once more, my phone buzzed. Marcus was live this time. You're where? Mom is going crazy. Dad is leaving the intensive care unit today. I shut my eyes. In my fixation on the past, guilt washed over me. I had nearly forgotten about Dad's illness. I'm en route. I said I would. Today was a calmer day at the hospital. Light pouring in via big windows. While Dad slept, Mom sat next to his bed and held his hand. She glanced up as I entered, her face drawn with fatigue. "You're there. I've been so worried." "Why haven't you been answering your phone?" "Sorry," I murmured, averting her gaze. "Had to get Sophie to school. Then got caught up with some job things." Dad's eyes flew open when he spotted me. Something passed across his face. Fear. Before I can figure it out, I regret. Marcus rushed in with bagels and coffee. "Everyone has breakfast." He made the announcement with joy. "Dad may resume eating regular meals today, according to the doctor." I felt as though I was witnessing performers in a play as I watched Marcus, saw my mother stress over the food, and made jokes with my dad about hospital gowns. Was Marcus suspicious? What? If he realized I wasn't actually his complete sister, would he still hate me? Marcus left to answer a business call after breakfast as Mom went to complete some paperwork. When I was finally alone myself with Dad, I took out the letter. "I require answers." Silently, I said, "Actual ones." Dad, who looked older than I had ever seen him, sighed. "Ask me anything." "Did you ever try to find him after he sent this?" Dad acknowledged that I had engaged a private investigator around a year after your birth. He had relocated to Europe, which made my heart skip a beat. Specifically France. The PI discovered that he had opened a new legal business in France's Paris. A whole ocean distant. Had he fled from his shame that far? Or did the story have more to it? Have you ever? I took a deep breath. Did you ever feel angry with me because you knew I wasn't yours? Tears filled Dad's eyes. Never. Not even for a second. The day of your birth. You were put in my arms by the nurse, and you put your little hand on my finger. Right then. Biology was irrelevant. I had you. My eyes were wiped. Why tell me now, after all these years? Because secrets eventually find their way out. Softly, he said. Additionally, you have a right to know your own story. But he reached for my hand, Olivia. Please take care of your mother's heart no matter what you do with this knowledge. I nodded, but my thoughts were already racing. France was where Daniel Parker was. It wasn't much, but it was a start. That evening, after putting Sophie to bed, I finally told James everything. He listened without interrupting, holding me as I cried. What are you going to do? He asked when I finished. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to forget I ever learned this. Go back to normal life. But I can't. I need to know why. Why he left. Why he never tried to contact me. Why? My voice broke. Why wasn't I enough for him to stay? James held me tighter. Whatever you decide, I'm here. We'll figure this out together. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I got up and walked to my home office, opening my laptop. My cursor hovered over the search bar for a long moment before I typed flights to Paris. The next morning, I came at the hospital early, before everyone else that was up, looking stronger. I need you to tell me all you remember about that period, I said without preamble. About Daniel. About Mom. About what happened after Sarah died. Everything. Dad was quiet for a long moment, then began to speak. It was a difficult time. Your Aunt Sarah's death was sudden. A car accident on a rainy night. Your mother was devastated. They were so close. I had to leave for my father's funeral. 2 days later, I didn't want to go, but he trailed off. Lost in recollections. After Sarah passed away, Daniel changed. Retracted. Furious. When she passed away, he and Sarah were trying for a child. That, I believe, made it more difficult. Ever had any suspicions about him and Mom? Dad gave a headshake. Never. Not until the letter arrived. Your mother was so happy when she found out she was pregnant. She thought it was a miracle, given how long we've been trying. My throat tightened. You never tried for another baby after me? We did, actually, but it never happened. Now I wonder if he stopped paying, crossing his face. If you couldn't have children at all. I finished softly. If that's why Mom never got pregnant until Dad nodded, it doesn't matter now. You were all I ever wanted. I pulled out my phone, showing him the flight itinerary I had been looking at. His eyes widened. You were going to look for him? I have to, I said, even if it's just to understand why. He was quiet for a long moment. There's something else you should know, the PI. He found more than just Daniel's location. My heart stopped. What are you saying? He had another family in France. A wife, 2 daughters, about your age. Now, the room spun. Sisters. I had sisters. Does Mom know about any of this? A new voice asked from the doorway. We both turned to see Marcus standing there. His face pale horror washed over me. Marcus? I heard everything, he said quietly. How long have you known? Since last night, I whispered. I was going to tell you, He walked into the room, closing the door behind him. My whole life. I wondered why we looked so different. Everyone always said I was Dad's clone. While you, he shook his head. It makes sense now. Marcus, please. Does it matter? Dad interrupted. Does it change anything about who we are as a family? Marcus looked at him for a long moment, then at me. No, he said finally. It doesn't change who you are to me. Live. You're my sister. Period. Relief flooded through me as he pulled me into a hug over his shoulder. I saw Dad smiling, tears in his eyes. So, Marcus said as we pulled apart, when are we going to Paris? One blinked. We? You didn't think I'd let you do this alone, did you? Besides, he grinned, I've always wanted to see the Eiffel Tower, looking at them both. My father, who chose me, and my brother, who didn't care about DNA. I felt stronger. Whatever we found in France, whatever truths were still hidden, we would face them together. But first, we had to deal with Mom, and that conversation would change everything. Telling my mother the truth was the hardest thing I'd ever done. We chose to do it at home. After Dad was discharged from the hospital, Marcus and I had spent days planning how to break the news gently. But when the moment came, all our careful preparations dissolved into tears and trembling hands. Mom sat on her favorite armchair, Dad beside her on the couch, while Marcus and I perched nervously on the ottoman. The letter felt heavy in my pocket, like a time bomb waiting to explode. Catherine, Dad began, his voice steady despite his power. There's something we need to tell you. Something I should have told you 30 years ago. Man's face changed instantly. That sixth sense that mothers have telling her something was terribly wrong. Michael, what is it? I pulled out the letter with shaking hands. Mom, this came for Dad right after I was born. She took it, confusion evident on her face as she unfolded the paper. I watched her eyes move across the words, saw the exact moment understanding hit her. All the color drained from her face. No, she whispered. No, this isn't. This can't be, Mom, I said softly, reaching for her hand. She yanked it away. This is a lie, she said, her voice rising. Daniel, how dare you? How dare you suggest the night at Sarah's house? Dad said quietly. When I was away at my father's funeral, Mom stopped breathing. Her hands flew to her mouth as 30-year-old memories crashed over her. Oh, God, she choked out. Oh, God, no. The room fell silent except for her muffled sobs. I wanted to go to her, to hug her, but I didn't know if she'd accept comfort from me now, the living proof of her greatest mistake. Why didn't you tell me? She finally asked Dad, her voice raw. All these years. Because I loved you, he said simply. And I loved Olivia. Nothing else mattered. Mom turned to me, really looking at me, perhaps for the first time. Your eyes, she whispered. I always thought they looked like Sarah's, but they were his, weren't they? I gave a nod. Tears falling freely now. Does he know? Did you find him? Not yet, Marcus spoke up. But we know where he is. He's in France. Mom's head snapped up. France. He has another family there, I said softly. 2 daughters. Mom started laughing. A horrible, broken sound that turned into sobs. Of course he does. Of course he built a new life while destroying ours. Mom, he didn't destroy anything, I insisted. Look at us. Look at our family. Our family. She stood up suddenly. Our family is built on lies. Your dad? Michael. He raised another man's child while you watched. Dad asked why you loved her while we raised her together, while we created a happy life. I need air, Mom gasped, heading for the door. I can't. I need to think. We watched her go helpless. Dad started to rise, but Marcus stopped him. Give her time, he said. It's a lot to process. Mom didn't come home that night. She went to her sister Marie's house, leaving us all in a state of suspended animation. The next morning, I got a text from Aunt Marie. She's okay. She just needs time. A week passed. Mom came home, but things were different. She moved through the house like a ghost, barely speaking, barely eating. She couldn't look at me without crying. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I cornered her in the kitchen one morning. Mom, please talk to me. She turned away, but I grabbed her arm. Mom, I'm still me. I'm still your daughter. Are you? She whispered. How can you be? When everything I thought I knew about you was a lie. The only lie was biology, I said firmly. Everything else, every moment, every memory, every feeling, that was all real. She finally looked at me. Really looked at me. I loved him once, she admitted quietly. Daniel, before he married Sarah, but he chose her, and I chose Michael, and we were happy. Then Sarah died and everything fell apart. She sank into a chair and I sat beside her that night. I was so lost in grief, in pain. Daniel was there, and he understood because he was grieving too. It was just one moment of weakness to you. Regret? I asked. Not sure I wanted to know the answer. She reached out, touching my face. How could I regret anything that gave me you? We helped each other and cried. 30 years of secrets washing away with our tears. 2 months later, I stood in front of an elegant townhouse in Paris, 16th arrondissement. Marcus stood beside me, holding my hand. We'd hired a private investigator who confirmed that Daniel Parker still lived here with his French wife, Isabelle. Ready? Marcus asked. I gave a nod, my heart pounding as I pressed the doorbell. A woman answered, elegant late 50s, with a questioning look away. Is Daniel Parker home? I asked in English. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Who is asking? My name is Olivia Bennett. I'm his daughter. The woman's face went completely white without a word. She turned and walked inside, leaving the door open. We heard rapid French being spoken, then footsteps, and suddenly there he was, Daniel Parker, my father by birth. He looked older than in the photos, his dark hair now gray. But those eyes, my eyes were exactly the same. He stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. Olivia, he breathed. How? They had a heart attack, I said, my voice steady. He told me the truth, showed me your letter. Daniel gripped the doorframe for support. I never thought. I hope someday. Hoped what? I asked sharply. That I'd come looking for you. That I'd want to know why my biological father abandoned me before I was even born. Please, he said, come inside. Let me explain. The next 2 hours were surreal. We sat in his elegant living room while he told his story, how he loved my mother first, but thought she didn't love him back, how he married Sarah, trying to forget Catherine, how Sarah's death, and that one night with my mother destroyed him with guilt. I couldn't stay, he said. I couldn't face Michael knowing what I'd done. Couldn't look at Catherine without remembering, so I ran, came to France to start over, and never looked back, Marcus asked coldly. Daniel flinched. I looked back every day. I kept track of Olivia from afar. School achievements, graduations. I have a whole file. He disappeared into his study and returned with a thick folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, school photos taken from yearbooks, even a program from my college graduation. You were there? I asked, stunned. He gave a nod. In the back. I left before anyone could see me. Why didn't you ever reach out? Because Michael was a better father than I could ever be, he said simply. He loved you completely, without reservation. I was a coward who ran away. You deserved better than me. And your daughters here? Marcus asked. Did they deserve better too? Daniel's face crumpled. Sophie and Marie don't know about you. Isabelle knows she's the only one I've ever told. I've spent 30 years trying to make up for my past mistakes by being the best father I could be to them. As if on cue, the front door opened and 2 women about my age walked in, stopping short when they saw Papa. One of them asked Coy Sandhills. Daniel looked at me, a question in his eyes. I nodded slightly. What followed was another hour of explanations, tears, and revelations. My half-sisters were shocked but not hostile. They asked questions, share photos, try to bridge 30 years of separation in a single afternoon. Before we left, Daniel pulled me aside. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you," he said, "but I'd like to be part of your life now, if you'll let me." I looked at him. This man who helped create me, then vanished, who loved me from afar but never had the courage to face me, who built a new family while abandoning his old one. "I have a father," silently, I said, "a real one, who chose me every day for 30 years. But I took a deep breath. Maybe we can start with coffee sometimes. Get to know each other." His eyes filled with tears as he nodded. The flight home was quiet. Both Marcus and I lost in our thoughts when we landed. Mom and Dad were waiting at the airport. One look at our faces told them everything. "Did you find what you were looking for?" Dad asked as he hugged me. I held him tight, breathing in the familiar scent that meant safety and love and home. "Yes," I said. "I found out where I came from, but more importantly, I found out where I belong." Mom stepped forward hesitantly. "Over the past 2 months, we've begun to heal, to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of truth rather than secrets." "And where is that?" she asked softly. I looked at them. My mother who gave me life, my father who chose to love me, my brother who stood by me through everything right here, I said with my real family. 6 months later, we all gathered for Christmas. Mom, Dad, now fully recovered. Marcus and his girlfriend, James and Sophie. And yes, even Daniel, who flew in from Paris with Sophie and Marie. It was awkward at first. Decades of secrets and pain sitting heavily between us. But then Sophie, my beautiful, innocent daughter, climbed into Daniel's lap and asked him to read her a story. And somehow, watching my biological father bond with my child while my real father looked on with a smile, I realized the family isn't about blood or biology or even choice. Sometimes it's about love. It's about forgiveness. It's about the courage to face the truth and the strength to rebuild from its ashes. Dad's heart attack had shattered our family's foundations, bringing 30 years of secrets into the light. But from those broken pieces, we built something new, something stronger, more honest, more real. And in the end, isn't that what family is really about?